Hey there folks, I'm Quint, and today we're going to be talking about Mega Man. I freaking love this thing. Now I love Mega Man. My favorite video game franchise of all time is Mega Man, primarily the classic series and its sequel series, Mega Man X. And today, since I had nothing better to do, you have nothing better to do, and since Mega Man 11 is coming out in 2 months now, I figured that we'd talk about the first game of the series, where it all started, where his journey began. So let's take a look, shall we? Great.
Released in 1987, Mega Man, known as Rockman in Japan, was created by a team of 6 people led by Akira Kitamura, the creator and director of Mega Man. Alongside him were Keiji Inafune, Yasuaki Kishimoto, Takashi Nishiyama, Nobuyuki Matsushima, Naoya Tomita, and the composer of the soundtrack, Manami Matsume. Mega Man's story begins with 2 scientists, Dr. Thomas Light and Dr. Albert Wily. They were partners that tried to find different ways to benefit mankind through creating robots to help with daily hardships. Due to differing opinions, Dr. Wily parted ways with Dr. Light and began to pursue his lifelong dream of complete and total world domination. Dr. Wily breaks into Light's lab and kidnaps 6 of his creations: Cutman, Gutsman, Electman, Bombman, Fireman, and Iceman. Dr. Light's helper robot by the name of Rock is tasked with suiting up and becoming a fighting robot. With his new abilities and strength, Rock becomes Mega Man. Mega Man then goes out to retrieve the 6 robot masters and stop Dr. Wily from taking over the world. And he does. Many times over. Right off the bat when we start up the game, we're introduced to the title. Okay, no music, no nothing, which is weird because in the Japanese version, while there's no sound, at least we see Mega Man striking a pose and looking cool. Here in the US version, we get nothing. That's not the only time we got screwed out of cool artwork. With the original box art, we didn't get the Japanese manga-inspired artwork. Hell, we didn't even get the kick-ass European artwork. No, instead we got this. Anyways, getting back on track, after we hit start, we're greeted with the level select wheel. This is honestly pretty cool. I figure it wasn't every day you got a video game that allowed you to pick and choose where you wanted your adventure to start. Mega Man really encourages you to experiment, and every stage is diverse in its looks and its level design. From a construction site to an icy plain, Mega Man always has something different to give the player. Now it's all a matter of choosing where to start. How about we try Gutsman? He looks pretty cool. I do believe I made a terrible mistake. Let's try Bombman then. Now I'm sure this one... Oh god! So as I mentioned before, the levels really are diverse. What helps contribute to this is how the game looks. Even for when it came out, I don't think there was a game that looked or felt quite like Mega Man. Everything seems to aim for capturing the eye. The colors of the stages are on point, Mega Man's sprite really stands out. Overall, it's a great looking game. Simple, yet complex. Added on with a really great soundtrack by Manami Matsume, Mega Man is a joy to both the eyes and ears, although maybe not as much of a joy to play.
Now, for the most part, Mega Man's controls work. He runs, jumps, shoots, climbs, all that good stuff. It just could have been a little bit tighter.
He doesn't start moving right away. Instead, he builds up momentum for a second, and then he starts running. And even stranger, he doesn't stop right away either. Once you let go of the D-pad, Mega Man will move slightly further before finally coming to a halt.
I can see what they were trying to go for. They wanted a more realistic movement for Mega Man. And I wouldn't have a problem with that if the level design was kind of centered around that and felt like it was built around it. It's not, though.
Mega Man is a difficult game in all the wrong ways. A very good example of this is how the game likes to throw enemies and obstacles at you in the absolute worst of spots. One minute you'll be dealing with unkillable ground enemies with small hitboxes. The next, you'll be climbing up a ladder that has enemies that shoot near unavoidable lightning blasts. One instance you'll be platforming over a giant bottomless pit, on top of enemies that move in sporadic patterns, on top of shooting at you. Sometimes they cause you to fall and die without any chance of recovering. Combine that with Mega Man's slippery controls, which clearly the levels were not built around, and you're going to be hearing over and over and over again. Sometimes before you even get to a boss's chamber, you have to maneuver over a big eye. And these jerks take out a third of your health with each hit. And if things couldn't get any more ludicrous, every hallway leading to your boss fight has enemies and obstacles placed in your way that could potentially kill you before you even make it to the boss. If you die to a boss, which chances are you will, but more on that in a minute, you'll be placed back at the beginning of the chamber, and you have to go through it again just to have a shot at the boss. What were they thinking? I want to assume that the team wanted Mega Man to be a game that players couldn't beat in a day. That's why it's so hard. They probably wanted it to be something players would spend some time on, which I get. If I was a game designer in the 80s with all the limited technology at the time, I probably wouldn't want my game to be beaten in an hour either. However, I think making the game borderline unfair isn't the best way to pad out my experience. I'm all for a game being challenging and difficult to beat. I live for games that challenge me and force me to learn its rules. Mega Man is a game where even if you learn its rules, even if you become good at it, it will sometimes still brutally kick your ass with no remorse. On top of that, the game lacks any way to save progress. It doesn't even have a password system, which games even before it did in fact have. So if you want to beat Mega Man, prepare to sit down for some time and cancel your evening plans, because you are really committing. And if things couldn't get any more relentless, the lack of accomplishment really hits home with Mega Man's bosses. I feel when it comes to designing a boss, no matter how challenging, a player should be able to read a boss's pattern of attack. A player should be able to analyze, learn the best way of handling a foe, and proceed accordingly. It should be a test of skill and a test of how much the player has learned getting to this point in the game. A majority of Mega Man's bosses, unfortunately, do not do this. Most movements are too sporadic and often nonsensical. Some bosses like Electman move so irregularly and attacks way too quickly for me to react. Jeez, that's a third of my health gone! Fireman's Firestorm, like, how do I dodge this? Turns out it's based on how close you are and whether or not you attack. But that's probably not what people are thinking when they get to a boss in the first place. They want to fight it, so they'll probably go in guns blazing. The only exceptions are Cutman and Bombman. Bombman is probably the best design out of the 6 robots, because he's relatively easy to read. Cutman is easy as well, but even then it's only because of how much damage he takes. The bosses can be beaten in time, but it takes a lot of trial and error in a game that's already punishing enough. Let me give you an example of some good boss design. Now, Kingdom Hearts 2 is an action RPG, and the whole game is revolved around a rather robust combat system. Enemies and bosses almost always have their moves telegraphed, so a player with a decent amount of skill can act accordingly and find the right moment to attack. There's planning, there's strategy, a flow, which is something Mega Man severely lacks. And I understand that this came out at an earlier date, 1987 and 2006, that's quite some years apart. My opinion still stands though. A player should be able to comprehend how a boss works, and here, you just kinda have to go in and hope for the best. Gosh, I need a break. Wait, what's this? B? Yeah, I almost forgot to mention, one thing that separates Mega Man from the typical crowd is the weapons you receive after you beat a Robot Master. It's a nice change of pace from your default weapon, the Mega Buster. Mega Man has 6 weapons in total he can use, and all of them can be used against bosses to take them down quicker. It's kinda like rock, paper, scissors in a way. Some like Firestorm and Thunderbeam are even good outside of boss fights. Thunderbeam, for example, shoots 3 large piercing bolts of electricity in 3 directions, and there's plenty of it. Firestorm is good too because of its added shield that circles around you. Most of them, however, don't get much use outside of boss battles, at least not for me. For example, Hyper Bomb doesn't even explode on impact, you have to wait for it to slowly blow up, and even then you're just better off using weapons like Firestorm or Thunderbeam. What's the point in giving me extra weapons if they have no use? Well, I mean, they do get used, but it's situational at best. Super Arm, for example, is really only useful because it's Cutman's weakness. That, and it allows you to go into Electman stage and find a tool Mega Man can use to create platforms, the Magnet Beam. This thing is great. It really helps with getting past certain spots in the game that might be a little too ridiculous to get past otherwise. It's even required in one of the final levels of the game. I really wish the game told you that, because while the Magnet Beam is in plain sight, it doesn't tell you what it does, and it doesn't give any indication that you need it in order to beat the game. In fact, I just realized, the game doesn't tell you that you have alternate weapons ever. You're given no indication that you received a weapon or told how it works. I found out how to use Super Arm by complete accident the very first time I touched this game. Imagine going through the entire game without knowing about this. I don't know how you could, really. Such an important feature in the game, and they didn't think to tell you anything about it. It is possible to beat Mega Man with your Mega Buster only, trust me. I did it. It was an absolute nightmare, but I did it. Yes, you have to use certain weapons to get past certain obstacles, and like I said, the Magnet Beam is required. But outside of that, you can beat every single boss with the Mega Buster, though especially in Electman's case, it's only doable with manipulation of boss AI. The game heavily encourages you to use alternate weapons to have an easier time with the game, but if that was the case, then they should have told me I had them to begin with. Alright, well anyways, after you beat the 6 Robot Masters, it's off to Wily's Fortress, and this is where things get a little more tough than before. Honestly though, if you made it this far, chances are you'll get through the levels just fine. I wouldn't say anything surprising really comes your way, at least not until the end. Your biggest challenge will definitely be the bosses. A lot of people consider the first boss in the Wily stages, the Yellow Devil, to be the hardest Mega Man fight in the classic series. And I somewhat agree. I mean, this guy is like a speed demon on meth. He just barrages you with blocks, forms into a monster, and shoots you with his eye. You only have a split second to attack him before he repeats his process in the opposite direction.
And I'm not gonna lie, this is my favorite boss fight in the game. It feels so satisfying to beat the Yellow Devil and conquer this fight because it's hard, but it's fair. And I get this feeling of satisfaction that I just do not feel with any other boss in this game.
No. The worst boss for me is the Copy Robot. A boss that sums up my problems with the boss design in general. You mash the shoot button and hope for the best. This jerk can take out your health pretty quickly if you're not careful, and his buster shots do way more damage than yours. How is that fair? And then you have CWU-01P.
Oh yeah, that's its name.
He just moves in a circle and periodically shoots at you, constantly getting faster and faster. God, these boss fights suck! Whether you beat a boss with their weakness or only your Mega Buster, no boss fight apart from the Yellow Devil is fun, satisfying, or feels rewarding to conquer in the slightest. Bosses are either too hard or too easy. There's no in between. Oh, and don't even get me started about the rematches with the Robot Masters. I didn't mention this until now, but you do fight the Robot Masters again. Cutman and Electman come back in the second stage. Then in the last stage, after getting through a platforming section, which is absolute BS, you fight the other four, one after another. And sure, you have their weaknesses, they're nothing but fodder to you now, but you have no means of recovering your health, and you really need to bust your balls and pray that by the end of the fight, you have enough health to take on Mr. World Domination himself. You have to fight Wily almost immediately after the gauntlet, and if you made it to Wily with no lives and little health to spare, consider yourself royally boned, because even after fighting the Robot Masters again, you are given nothing to recover your health. Nothing! And once you die to Wily, which you probably will, you have to go back to the beginning of the stage and do this crap over and over and over again until by some miracle, you finally win. The end. Well done. You beat Mega Man in one sitting with no way to take a break. Now let me ask you something. Was it worth it? For me, someone who grew up playing this game and knows it like the back of my hand, yes. I have grown to admire and appreciate this game for what it did right, and to be fair, this was the first game in the series out of many and more to come. But could I recommend this game to someone who wanted to try out Mega Man for the first time? Hell no. The first Mega Man is a game I would recommend checking out after you've gotten acquainted with the series just a bit more. It's an unforgiving and often unfair platformer that has horribly designed bosses, detrimental enemy placement, and forgets to inform players of the most crucial gameplay feature it has, the special weapons, and doesn't explain how the weapons themselves work.
Now, I know I've mostly been negative so far, and I'm sorry about that, guys, but I just want you to know that this is what you're getting into when you play the first Mega Man game. Now, I love Mega Man because it's special to me. Like, obviously, it's special to me, right? And this game just goes to show you how far the series has come since 1987, and it's still going strong so many years later, 30 years later, with Mega Man 11, and I'm just so excited. Now, whether or not the sequels hold up, we'll get to that in a later video. But until then, I've been Quint. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you subscribe, hope you enjoy, and stay tuned for more. Bye.